23 nannies in 18 months. That's what the employment agency told Grace when they called her that Tuesday morning. 23 professional caregivers, each one lasting less than 3 weeks before they walked out of the Hartwell mansion, some in tears, others in pure rage. Grace listened to the agency director's voice on the phone, explaining how they needed someone to clean the house that afternoon. Just cleaning. Nothing more. The regular service had canceled, and the Hartwell family was in desperate need. Grace had been working with the hotel cleaning service for 30 years, and they sometimes sent her to private homes when things got urgent. "I'm telling you this up front," the director said, her voice tired. "The family has 2 boys, 7-year-old twins. They're difficult, but you're just there to clean. You won't have to deal with them directly." Grace almost laughed. In her 52 years of life, she'd dealt with plenty of difficult situations. 2 7-year-olds couldn't be worse than scrubbing hotel bathrooms or working double shifts to keep the lights on. She needed the money. Her sister Patricia had medical bills piling up, and the treatment wasn't getting any cheaper. "I'll take it," Grace said. The Hartwell mansion sat in the wealthiest part of the city, behind iron gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. Grace had cleaned plenty of big houses before, but this one felt different. Cold somehow, like all that money couldn't warm up the marble floors and high ceilings. A tired-looking woman in her 20s opened the door. Her name tag read Hannah, and her eyes had the haunted look of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. "Thank God you're here," Hannah said, stepping aside. "I'm the current nanny. Well, I was the nanny. I quit. Today's my last day, and I'm counting down the minutes." Grace followed her inside, carrying her cleaning supplies. The house was beautiful but messy in that specific way that spoke of chaos. Toys scattered across expensive rugs, juice stains on white furniture, crayon marks on walls that probably cost more than Grace's yearly salary. "Where are the boys?" Grace asked. "Upstairs in their playroom," Hannah said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And if you're smart, you'll stay far away from them. Those kids are demons. I have a degree in early childhood education. I've worked with special needs children. I've handled everything. But those 2, she shook her head. "Their father pays really well, but no amount of money is worth this." Before Grace could respond, a crash echoed from upstairs. Then screaming. Then the sound of something breaking. Hannah closed her eyes. "That's my cue. Good luck with the cleaning." She grabbed her purse and walked toward the stairs. Grace heard her calling out, "Boys, I'm leaving now. Your father will be home at 6, more crashing." A door slamming. Then Hannah came running back down the stairs, her face red, her professional composure completely gone. "That's it. I'm done. They locked me in the closet. Do you hear me? They locked me in the closet for 20 minutes. She fumbled with her phone. "I'm calling Mr. Hartwell right now. He can come home and deal with his monsters himself." She stormed out the front door, leaving Grace standing alone in the massive entryway. The house fell quiet. Too quiet. Grace knew that kind of silence. It was the silence of children waiting to see what happened next. Watching. Testing. She set down her cleaning supplies and walked slowly up the curved staircase. Her knees ached a bit the way they always did these days, but she kept going. At the top of the stairs, a long hallway stretched out, doors on both sides. One door was open and she could see what must be the playroom. Grace stood in the doorway and looked inside. 2 identical boys sat in the middle of destruction. They'd torn cushions apart, thrown books across the room, broken what looked like an expensive robot toy. They were small for 7, with dark curly hair and eyes that held too much anger for children so young. They stared at her, waiting for her reaction. Waiting for her to yell or threaten or run away like the others probably had. Grace walked into the room and sat down on the floor, right in the middle of the mess. Her old knees protested, but she ignored them. "You know," she said, her voice calm and steady, "when I was about your age, my daddy left. Just walked out one day and never came back. And I was so angry I went into my mama's kitchen and broke every single dish we owned. All of them. Plates, bowls, cups, everything." The boys didn't move, but she could see their surprise. This wasn't what they expected. "My mama didn't yell at me," Grace continued, picking up a torn book page and looking at it. "She just sat down in the middle of all those broken dishes and asked me if I felt better. And you know what? I didn't. I felt worse, because breaking things doesn't fix what's broken inside." One of the twins, the one on the left, spoke first. "We don't want another nanny." "Well, good news," Grace said with a slight smile. "I'm not a nanny." I'm here to clean your house. That's all? Everyone says that, the other twin said. Then they try to make us behave and follow rules and act normal. Normal's overrated, Grace said. She started picking up some of the torn cushion pieces. But I'll tell you what. I've got work to do and you've got choices to make. You can keep destroying things, which just means more work for you and me to clean up later. Or you can help me straighten this place up before your daddy gets home. Your choice. The twins looked at each other, having one of those silent twin conversations. Grace had heard about that, how twins could communicate without words. What's your name? The boy on the left asked. Grace. And you are? I'm Ethan, that's Eli. Nice to meet you both, Grace said. As if they were at a church social instead of sitting in a demolished playroom. She kept cleaning, not pressuring them, not watching them too closely. After about 5 minutes, Eli picked up a book. Then Ethan started gathering broken toy pieces. They didn't say anything, but they were helping. An hour later, when a tall man in an expensive suit came rushing through the door, calling out for Hannah, he found something he clearly didn't expect. Grace was wiping down the kitchen counters. The twins were sitting at the kitchen table, actually eating the sandwiches she'd made them. Not throwing food or screaming. The man, who must be Mr. Hartwell, stopped in the doorway and stared. Where's Hannah? He asked. She quit, Daddy, Ethan said, his mouth full of peanut butter and jelly. Mr. Hartwell's shoulders dropped. He looked like a man who'd been running on empty for too long. Dark circles under his eyes. Tie loosened. The weight of the world on his back. Of course she did, he said quietly. Then he looked at Grace. You're from the cleaning service? Yes, sir. And you've been here with my sons alone for... He checked his watch. 3 hours? Yes, sir. He looked at the boys again as if trying to confirm they were real. And everyone's still alive. Seems that way, Grace said. Mr. Hartwell pulled out a chair and sat down heavily. He put his head in his hands for a moment, then looked up at Grace with something like hope in his eyes. How much would it cost to get you to stay? Not as a cleaner, as their nanny. Just for a week until I can find someone qualified. Name your price. Grace thought about her sister's medical bills. She thought about those 2 angry little boys who just needed someone to see past their behavior, to the pain underneath. She thought about the son she'd lost to the system 30 years ago, the one she still dreamed about. Triple my cleaning rate, she said. And I work 7 to 7. Done, Mr. Hartwell said immediately. When can you start? Grace looked at the twins. They were watching her carefully, waiting to see if she'd really stay or if this was just another temporary adult who'd disappear. I already did, Grace said. Grace's first real morning with the twins started at 6:30 when she heard screaming from upstairs. She'd spent the night in the guest room, and the sound of Eli's nightmare woke her instantly. Years of light sleeping, always alert for trouble, had trained her well. She found him tangled in his sheets, crying in his sleep. Ethan was already awake in the next bed, staring at his brother with that helpless look children get when they don't know how to fix things. Grace sat on the edge of Eli's bed and gently touched his shoulder. Hey, sweetheart. You're safe. It's just a dream. Eli's eyes opened, confused and wet with tears. For a moment, he looked like he might push her away. Then he did something that probably surprised them both. He grabbed onto her and held tight. Grace rocked him slowly, the way she used to rock her own son before everything fell apart. She hummed an old song her grandmother used to sing. Nothing fancy. Just a simple melody that spoke of safety and home. She's gone, Eli whispered against her shoulder. She's always gone in my dreams. Grace didn't have to ask who. She'd learned from Mr. Hartwell the night before that the boy's mother had died 2 years ago. Cancer, fast and cruel. I know, baby, I know. Ethan climbed out of his bed and stood beside them, his small hand touching his brother's back. The 3 of them stayed like that until Eli's breathing evened out and the tears stopped. That's how Mr. Hartwell found them an hour later when he came to wake the boys for school. Grace making breakfast while both twins sat at the kitchen counter, still in their pajamas, actually talking to her about their dreams. Not the nightmare. Different dreams. The kind about what they wanted to be when they grew up. We're going to be late, Mr. Hartwell said, but his voice was soft. Surprised. School doesn't start for another hour, Grace replied, flipping pancakes. They've got time to eat properly and get dressed without rushing. Rushing in the morning just makes everyone cranky. Mr. Hartwell opened his mouth like he might argue, then closed it. He poured himself coffee and watched his sons eat breakfast without throwing food or fighting. Grace could feel his amazement, but she didn't acknowledge it. This wasn't a performance. This was just Tuesday. The real test came later. On Wednesday, Ethan decided to see if Grace would break. He took everything out of his dresser and threw it around his room. Every shirt, every pair of pants, every sock. Then he stood in the middle of it all and screamed. Grace walked in, looked at the mess, and sat down in the hallway just outside his door. "I'm going to sit right here," she said calmly, "and when you're done being angry, we'll figure out what happens next." "I hate you," Ethan yelled. "Okay, I want you to leave." "I'm not leaving." "Why not?" "Everyone else does." And there it was. The real issue. Not the mess. Not the anger. The fear underneath it all. Grace stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what I think? I think you're testing me. You're trying to see how bad you have to be before I give up on you like everyone else. And I'm going to tell you something important, so listen close." Ethan had stopped yelling. She could hear his ragged breathing. "There's nothing you can do that will make me leave," Grace said. "You can throw things. You can yell. You can make messes. And I'm still going to be here tomorrow. Because I'm not here because you're easy. I'm here because you need someone who stays." The crying started then. Real crying, not angry crying. The kind that comes from somewhere deep and hurting. Grace waited until Ethan came and sat beside her in the hallway. They sat there together for a long time, not talking, just being. Thursday brought a different challenge. Eli stopped talking completely. Not a word. Not to Grace, not to his brother, not to anyone at school. The teacher called, concerned. Mr. Hartwell came home early, worried. "Should we take him to a doctor?" he asked Grace, his face tight with stress. "Let me try something first," Grace said. She didn't force Eli to talk. She just talked to him instead. All day Friday, she narrated everything she did. "I'm making lunch now. Grilled cheese, your favorite. The cheese is melting just right, getting all gooey. Your brother wants tomato soup with his. Do you want soup too? Blink once for yes, twice for no." Eli blinked once. "Soup it is." She told him stories while she folded laundry. Stories about her own childhood. About her grandmother who raised her after her father left. About the neighborhood she grew up in where everyone knew everyone's business. "My best friend when I was your age was named Betty," Grace said, matching up socks. "And one summer we decided we weren't going to talk for a whole week. We made up hand signals instead. Drove our mothers crazy. But you know what? Sometimes you need quiet. Sometimes words are just too much." Eli watched her, really watched her, like he was trying to figure out if she meant it. That evening, while Grace was washing dishes, she felt a small hand slip into hers. Eli stood beside her, still not talking but holding on. "I got you," Grace said softly. "However long you need." On Saturday morning, Eli spoke. Just 2 words. "Thank you." But it was enough. The breakthrough happened on Sunday afternoon. Grace was sitting in the living room, looking at an old photo she kept in her wallet. She didn't hear Ethan come in until he was standing right beside her. "Who's that?" he asked, pointing at the picture. Grace looked down at the faded photograph. A little boy, maybe 3 years old, smiling at the camera. Her son. Her Daniel. "This is my boy," Grace said quietly. "Where is he?" Grace had learned that children deserved honest answers even when the truth was hard. "I lost him a long time ago. When he was little, his daddy died. I was so sad and so broke that I couldn't take care of him properly. The government took him away and gave him to another family. I haven't seen him in almost 30 years. Both twins were there now, Eli having joined his brother. They looked at the picture, then at Grace. "Do you miss him?" Eli asked. "Every single day." "Is that why you're nice to us?" Ethan's voice was small. "Because we remind you of him?" Grace set the photo down and looked at both boys. "I'm nice to you because you deserve kindness. Both of you. You've been through something terrible. Losing your mama, that's about the hardest thing that can happen to a kid. And instead of people being patient with you, they expected you to just get over it and behave. But grief doesn't work like that. Daddy doesn't talk about her," Eli whispered. "I know, baby. Some people deal with hurt by trying to forget, but that just makes the hurt grow bigger." Ethan sat down next to Grace. "Do you think she's mad at us for being bad?" Grace's heart broke a little. She pulled both boys close. "Listen to me. Your mama loved you more than anything in this world, and wherever she is, she's not mad. She's hoping someone will be patient with you while you figure out how to live without her. That's all you're doing. You're not bad kids. You're hurt kids. There's a difference. That night, Mr. Hartwell came home to find something that stopped him in his tracks. Grace was reading a story to the twins on the couch. But what made him pause was the sound. His sons were laughing. Really laughing. Not the mean laughter when they'd pulled pranks on nannies. This was the kind of laughter he hadn't heard since before his wife got sick. He stood in the doorway, watching this woman who'd been in their lives less than a week transform his broken family into something that almost looked like joy. Later, after the boys were asleep, he found Grace in the kitchen making tea. "I need to ask you something," Mr. Hartwell said. "What you said earlier about your son, about losing him. That must have been incredibly hard." "Hardest thing I ever went through," Grace said simply. "Then why are you here? Doesn't it hurt to be around children when you lost your own?" Grace poured hot water over her tea bag, watching it steep. "It does hurt, but maybe that's exactly why I can help them. I know what loss feels like. I know what it's like when the world expects you to be okay when you're not. Those boys upstairs, they need someone who understands that pain doesn't have a timeline, someone who won't give up when they're at their worst." Mr. Hartwell was quiet for a long moment. "I want you to stay. Not just for a week, for as long as you're willing. I'll pay you whatever you need." Grace looked at him, this grieving father who'd been running from his own pain by burying himself in work. "What those boys need most isn't another nanny. They need their father. Money can't fix what's broken here. You have to do that yourself." It was bold, maybe too bold. But Grace had learned that sometimes the truth needed to be said, even when it was uncomfortable. Mr. Hartwell's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. "You're right. I know you're right. I just don't know how to do it anymore. How to be present when everything reminds me of her. One day at a time," Grace said. "Same as the rest of us." That night, for the first time in 2 years, Mr. Hartwell went upstairs and sat in his son's room until they fell asleep. It was a small step, but it was a beginning. 3 weeks into Grace's time with the Hartwell family, everything changed on a Tuesday afternoon when a silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Grace was in the kitchen teaching the twins how to make cookies when she heard the front door open without a knock. That should have been her first warning. "Hello?" a woman's voice called out, sharp and commanding. "Where is everyone?" The twins' faces went pale. Ethan whispered, "That's Grandma Catherine." A tall woman in her 60s walked into the kitchen wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than Grace's car. Her silver hair was pulled back perfectly, her makeup flawless, her jewelry understated but clearly expensive. She looked like old money, the kind that came with expectations and judgments. Her eyes swept over the scene, flour on the counter, Grace in her simple jeans and sweater, the boys with chocolate on their faces. Her expression shifted from surprise to something colder. "Boys?" she said, her voice softening slightly. "Come give Grandma a hug." The twins obeyed, but Grace noticed how stiff they were, how forced their smiles looked. Catherine's eyes landed on Grace. "And who might you be?" "I'm Grace. I'm taking care of the boys." "Taking care of them?" Catherine's eyebrow raised. "You mean you're the new nanny?" "Yes, ma'am." Something flickered in Catherine's expression. Disapproval, maybe? Or surprise. "I see. And where did my son find you?" "Which agency?" "I'm not from an agency. I was here cleaning and Mr. Hartwell asked me to stay." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Catherine set her expensive purse on the counter, careful to avoid the flour. "The cleaning lady. My grandson's new caretaker is the cleaning lady." Grace kept her voice level. "I've been working with children for 30 years, ma'am. Maybe not in fancy houses, but I know what kids need." "I'm sure you do," Catherine said, but her tone suggested she thought the opposite. "Boys, why don't you go wash up?" "I need to speak with Miss Grace, just Grace." "Of course, just Grace." The twins looked at Grace, worried. She gave them a small nod, letting them know it was okay. They left reluctantly, glancing back over their shoulders. Once they were gone, Catherine's polite mask dropped. "I don't know what game you're playing, but my son is vulnerable right now. He's been grieving, not thinking clearly. Taking advantage of that is beneath contempt." Grace felt anger rise in her chest but kept it contained. "I'm not taking advantage of anyone. Your grandsons needed help, and I'm helping them. My grandsons need a proper nanny, someone with credentials, someone who understands their world, their education, their future, not someone who cleans toilets for a living." The word stung, but Grace had heard worse in her life. She'd been looked down on before, dismissed before. She knew how to stand her ground. Those boys were destroying themselves, Grace said quietly. 23 nannies with all the right credentials couldn't reach them. But somehow this toilet cleaner did. Maybe that tells you something. Catherine's face flushed. How dare you speak to me that way? I could have you removed from this house today. That's up to Mr. Hartwell, not you. Before Catherine could respond, Mr. Hartwell himself walked in. He looked between his mother and Grace, reading the tension immediately. Mother, I didn't know you were coming today. Clearly, Catherine said, her composure returning. We need to talk. In private. Grace started to leave, but Mr. Hartwell held up his hand. Anything you need to say, you can say in front of Grace. She's part of this household now. Catherine's jaw tightened. Fine, then I'll be direct. This arrangement is inappropriate. You've hired someone with no qualifications, no background in childcare, no understanding of what your sons need. She's given my son something 23 qualified nannies couldn't, Mr. Hartwell said. Peace, stability, laughter. I haven't heard them laugh like they do with Grace since Elizabeth died. Catherine's expression softened at the mention of her daughter-in-law, but only for a moment. I loved Elizabeth too, and she would want what's best for her boys. Not this temporary solution. What happens when this woman decides to leave? When she realizes this job is too hard? The boys will be devastated all over again. I'm not going anywhere, Grace said. Everyone says that, Catherine replied, until they don't. The conversation ended there, but the damage was done. Catherine stayed for dinner, making pointed comments about the boys' table manners, their school performance, their need for structure. She barely spoke to Grace except to ask her to pass the salt, treating her like the help rather than someone who'd become important to her grandsons. That night, Grace lay in bed thinking about Catherine's words. The woman wasn't entirely wrong. Grace didn't have credentials. She wasn't from their world. And what if she did leave someday? Would she break these boys' hearts the way others had? The doubt crept in, cold and unwelcome. Things got worse over the next few days. Grace started noticing the whispers at the boys' school when she picked them up. Other parents, well-dressed and polished, clustering together and glancing her way. Their smiles were tight, their greetings brief. One mother, a blonde woman in designer yoga clothes, approached her directly. You're the new nanny, right? For the Hartwell twins? Yes, ma'am. That's so interesting. Most families at this school use prestige nannies or elite childcare services. Those agencies really vet their candidates thoroughly. Background checks, certifications, references. The whole 9 yards. Her smile was sweet as poison. But I guess every family has their own way of doing things. Grace understood perfectly. This was how people like this operated. No direct insults, just subtle digs wrapped in pleasantries. At home, Mr. Hartwell was facing his own pressures. Grace overheard him on the phone with his business partner. I know it's unconventional, Mr. Hartwell was saying, but the boys are doing so much better. Yes, I understand the optics. No, I haven't thought about what people might say. That evening, Grace was putting away laundry when she heard Mr. Hartwell and his mother talking in his study. The door was slightly open. You need to think about their future, Catherine was saying. Ethan and Eli will be going to the best prep schools, the best universities. They need someone who can prepare them for that world. Someone who fits. Grace fits just fine, does she? Can she help them with their applications to Exeter? Does she know the right families they should be socializing with? Can she prepare them for the society they were born into? There was a long pause. Then Mr. Hartwell said something that made Grace's heart sink. I hear what you're saying, Mom, I do. And you're right that I need to think long-term. Maybe Grace can transition them to someone more permanent, someone with the right background. Grace moved away from the door before she could hear more. She went to her room and sat on the bed, staring at the photo of her son. She'd known this was coming, hadn't she? People like the Hartwells didn't keep people like her around long-term. She was a band-aid, a temporary fix. Eventually, they'd want someone who matched their world. The next morning, Ethan noticed her mood immediately. Kids always did. What's wrong? He asked at breakfast. Nothing, sweetheart. Just tired. You're lying. Eli's voice was matter-of-fact. Adults think we don't notice when they're sad, but we do. Grace looked at these two boys who'd become so important to her in such a short time. They deserved the truth. Sometimes, she said carefully, people don't fit where they're supposed to be, like a puzzle piece in the wrong puzzle. It might work for a little while, but eventually everyone notices it doesn't quite match. Are you talking about you? Ethan asked, his eyes wide. Before Grace could answer, Mr. Hartwell walked in, already dressed for work. He looked at Grace, and she could see the conflict in his eyes. The man caught between what his heart knew was right and what his world expected of him. Boys, finish your breakfast, he said. Grace and I need to talk. The twins looked panicked. Eli grabbed Grace's hand. Don't let him fire you, please. It's okay, Grace said, though she wasn't sure it was. In the study, Mr. Hartwell closed the door and ran his hand through his hair. He looked exhausted. My mother has a point, he started. About thinking long-term. About what's best for the boys, Grace nodded. I know, but here's the thing. I've watched you with them. I've seen how they've changed. And I've been thinking about what you said that first week. About how I need to be present. How money can't fix what's broken. He looked directly at her. You were right. And if I let my mother and my social circle dictate how I raise my sons, I'm failing them worse than I already have. Mr. Hartwell, please call me David. And I need you to know something. I want you to stay. Not as a transition, not temporarily. I want you to be their permanent caregiver. I don't care what people say. I care about what's right for Ethan and Eli. Grace felt relief flood through her, but also fear. Your mother won't accept that. Neither will your friends. Then they'll have to learn, David said. Or they can stay away. My sons come first, finally. It was a beautiful moment, but Grace knew the battle wasn't over. Catherine wouldn't give up easily. Neither would the judgmental parents at school or David's concerned friends. The real fight was just beginning. The call came on a Thursday afternoon while Grace was folding laundry. The school's number flashed on her phone and her stomach dropped. Calls from school were never good news. Ms. Williams? This is the nurse at Oakmont Academy. Eli is having an asthma attack. It's serious. We've called an ambulance. Grace's hands went cold. I'm on my way. Which hospital? St. Michael's. But Ms. Williams, you should know that you're not listed as an emergency contact. We're trying to reach Mr. Hartwell, but Grace was already grabbing her keys. I'll be there in 10 minutes. She made it in 8, her heart pounding the entire drive. The ambulance was pulling away as she arrived at the school. Ethan was standing with the principal, his face streaked with tears. Grace! He ran to her and she caught him, holding tight. It's okay, baby. I'm here. We're going to the hospital right now. At St. Michael's, Grace rushed through the emergency room doors with Ethan's hand gripped in hers. The receptionist looked up. I'm here for Eli Hartwell. He came in by ambulance. Asthma attack. The receptionist checked her computer. Are you family? I'm his caregiver. I need to see proof of guardianship. Insurance cards, medical authorization forms. Grace's mind raced. She had nothing. David had never given her any official paperwork. She'd just been taking care of the boys and it had never come up. I don't have forms, but his brother is right here. The child needs someone with him. He's 7 years old and he's scared. I understand, ma'am, but without proper authorization, I can't let you back. HIPAA regulations. I'm sure you understand, Grace wanted to scream. Instead, she pulled out her phone and called David, straight to voicemail. He was in meetings all day. Important investor presentations he'd been preparing for all week. Please, Grace said to the receptionist. Just let me see him. Let him know someone's here. I'm sorry. Hospital policy. Grace sat down in the hard plastic chair, pulling Ethan close. They waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. Grace kept calling David. No answer. Then Catherine Hartwell walked through the doors. She was on her phone, speaking rapidly. Yes, I'm here now. No, I don't know where my son is. Apparently unreachable. She spotted Grace and Ethan. Her expression hardened. Catherine walked straight to the receptionist. I'm Catherine Hartwell. My grandson Eli was brought in. I need to see him immediately. Of course, Mrs. Hartwell, let me get someone to take you back. Just like that. No questions about paperwork or authorization. Just her name and her confidence, and doors opened. Catherine turned to Grace. You can go. I'll take it from here. I'm not leaving, Grace said quietly. You have no legal right to be here. You're not family. You're not even officially employed. You're the help. And the help doesn't belong in family medical situations. Ethan's grip on Grace tightened. She stays with me, Grandma. She's the one who takes care of us. Catherine's face softened when she looked at her grandson, but her voice stayed firm. Sweetheart, this is grown-up business. Why don't you come back with me to see your brother? Not without Grace. Ethan, no. His voice rose, drawing looks from others in the waiting room. Dad told us Grace is family now. You can't make her leave. A nurse appeared. Mrs. Hartwell, if you'd like to follow me. Catherine hesitated, looking between Ethan and Grace. Finally, she said, Fine. She can come, but we're going to have a conversation about this later. In the emergency room bay, Eli lay in a bed with an oxygen mask over his small face. His eyes were closed, his breathing labored even with the oxygen. He looked so tiny in that big hospital bed. Grace moved to his side immediately, taking his hand. His eyes fluttered open. Grace, he whispered behind the mask. I'm here, baby. You're going to be okay. A doctor came in, young and professional. Are you the parents? I'm the grandmother, Catherine said. And she's the nanny, the doctor nodded. Eli had a severe asthma attack triggered by anxiety. Has he been under any unusual stress lately? Grace and Catherine answered at the same time. No, Catherine said. Yes, Grace said. They looked at each other. The doctor waited. Grace spoke first. There's been tension in the household. Family disagreements about who should be taking care of the boys. Catherine's face flushed. That's hardly relevant. Actually, the doctor said gently, stress is a major trigger for childhood asthma. If there's instability at home, it could absolutely contribute to attacks like this. They kept Eli for observation. Grace sat in the chair beside his bed while Catherine made phone calls in the hallway, trying to reach David. Ethan curled up in a chair on the other side, not leaving his brother. Hours passed. The sun started setting outside the window. Finally, David burst through the door, still in his suit from the meetings, his face pale with fear. Eli. God, Eli. He went straight to the bed, touching his son's face. Is he okay? He's stable, Grace said. They're keeping him overnight. David looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion. The stress. You were here the whole time. They wouldn't let her back at first, Ethan said, his voice small and angry. They said she wasn't family. They said she couldn't see Eli. David's expression changed. He looked at the medical bracelet on his son's wrist, at the machines monitoring his breathing, and Grace saw something shift in his eyes. Understanding and anger. He turned to his mother, who'd followed him in. Did you try to keep Grace out? David, she has no legal authority. The hospital has rules. She's the person my sons trust most in the world. She's the one they call for when they have nightmares. She's the one who knows what triggers Eli's anxiety. His voice was rising, and she couldn't be with him when he needed her because I never bothered to make her official. Official? Catherine's voice was sharp. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that I've been a coward. Letting you and everyone else make me doubt the best thing that's happened to this family since Elizabeth died. Don't you dare use my daughter-in-law's name to justify this. Elizabeth would have loved Grace, David said, his voice breaking slightly. She would have been grateful that someone finally got through to our boys. Someone who loved them not because they were supposed to, but because they genuinely cared. Catherine shook her head. You're not thinking clearly. The stress of the situation, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in 2 years. David turned to Grace. I'm sorry. For not protecting you. For not standing up for you. For putting you in a position where you had to beg to see a child you've been caring for every day. Grace's throat was tight. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. And I need to fix this. Catherine moved toward the door. I can see I'm not wanted here. When you come to your senses, David, call me. Until then, I'll be speaking with my attorney about grandparents' rights. If you're going to create an unstable environment for my grandsons, I'll have no choice but to take action. The threat hung in the air. She left, her heels clicking down the hospital hallway. David sank into a chair, putting his head in his hands. She'll do it. She'll actually sue for custody. Maybe she's right, Grace said quietly. Maybe I am making things unstable. No. David looked up. She's making things unstable. The people who can't accept you are making things unstable, not you. Never you. Ethan had fallen asleep in his chair, exhausted from the day's trauma. Eli was sleeping too, his breathing easier now with the medication. Grace looked at these two boys who'd become everything to her. What are you going to do? She asked David. He was quiet for a long moment, watching his son sleep. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, determined. I'm going to make you family. Legally. Officially. in a way that no hospital, no school, and no judge can question. He looked at her directly. I'm going to make you their legal guardian. Joint custody, equal rights, everything. Grace stared at him. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything. My mother wants to threaten legal action? Fine. But she'll be fighting against a legally established family. One that works. One that loves these boys and puts them first. David, that kind of thing, it's not simple. People will talk. Your mother will be furious. You could lose relationships, business connections. I already lost what mattered most when Elizabeth died. I'm not losing it again. He reached over and took her hand. You saved my sons. You saved me. And I'm not letting anyone make you feel like you don't belong here. Not anymore. In that quiet hospital room with 2 sleeping boys between them, something changed. A line was drawn. A stand was taken. The easy path would have been to let Grace go. To find someone appropriate who fit into their world without making waves. But David had finally learned what his sons already knew. Sometimes the right thing is the hard thing, and real family isn't about who fits in. It's about who shows up, who stays, who loves you when you're at your worst. Grace had shown up. She had stayed. And now David was going to make sure she never had to question her place again. Outside the hospital room, Catherine Hartwell sat in her car, phone in hand, her attorney's number on the screen. Her finger hovered over the call button. Inside, a different kind of family was being born. One built not on bloodlines and social standing, but on something much stronger. Love. Real, messy, complicated, beautiful love. The legal papers came 3 weeks after the hospital incident. David's lawyer had drawn up guardianship documents making Grace a legal co-guardian of Ethan and Eli. Equal authority. Equal rights. Her name right next to David's on every form that mattered. Grace sat at the kitchen table staring at the papers, a pen in her shaking hand. You don't have to sign if you're not ready, David said gently. I know it's a lot. It's not that. Grace's voice was thick with emotion. I lost my son 30 years ago because I wasn't enough. Because I couldn't be the mother the system thought he deserved. And now you're asking me to be a legal guardian to your boys. It feels like a dream. Like any minute I'll wake up and be back in my tiny apartment, cleaning hotel rooms and wondering what happened to my baby. Ethan and Eli were at school, so it was just the 2 of them. David pulled up a chair beside her. You were always enough, Grace. The system failed you. You didn't fail anyone. He paused. And I'm not asking you to be their guardian despite your past. I'm asking because of who you are right now. The woman who didn't give up on 2 angry, hurting boys when 23 professionals did. The woman who taught me how to be a father again. Grace wiped her eyes and picked up the pen. Her signature was shaky but clear. Grace Williams. Right there on the official documents, the reaction from Catherine came swift and harsh. She filed for grandparents' rights the same day she found out about the guardianship. Her lawyer sent a letter claiming the household was unstable, that David was making rash decisions based on grief, that the children needed proper family structure. The custody hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Those 6 weeks were some of the hardest of Grace's life. Catherine's lawyer dug into everything. Her financial history, her lack of college education, the loss of her son to the system. Every painful detail of her past was pulled out and examined like evidence of her unworthiness. David's business partner quietly suggested he step back from the company for a while. Some of the investors were uncomfortable with the family drama. Parents at the boys' school stopped making eye contact with Grace during pickup. The whispers got louder. One afternoon, Grace found Ethan crying in his room. What's wrong, sweetheart? A kid at school said his mom said you're not our real family. He said the judge is going to take us away and make us live with Grandma. Ethan's voice broke. Is that true? Are they going to take us away from you? Grace's heart shattered. She pulled him close. Listen to me. No matter what happens, your daddy and I are going to fight for you. We're going to fight for this family. But what if you lose? It was the question that kept Grace awake at night. Then we keep fighting. And we keep loving each other. Because that's what families do. But Grace was scared. Terrified, actually. Catherine had money, connections, and lawyers who could make Grace's entire life look like a series of failures. How could a former maid with a lost son compete with that? The night before the hearing, Grace couldn't sleep. She sat in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, drinking tea and staring at the photo of her son. Her Daniel, Somewhere out there, a grown man now. Did he ever think about her? Did he hate her for losing him? Can't sleep either. David appeared in the doorway looking as exhausted as she felt. Just thinking. He sat down across from her. About tomorrow? About everything. About how maybe your mother is right. Maybe I'm not what's best for them. They could have a nanny with degrees and references, someone who fits into their world. They could have those things, David said, but they'd lose what matters most. They'd lose you. And Grace, you need to understand something. My sons aren't the only ones who need you. I need you too. Grace looked up, surprised. These past few months you haven't just taken care of my boys. You've taught me how to be present. How to feel things again instead of just running from pain. Elizabeth's death almost destroyed me. I was drowning and I was pulling my sons down with me. His voice cracked. You threw us a lifeline. All of us. I just did what felt right, exactly. You didn't overthink it. You didn't follow some manual. You just loved us. That's what families do. The courthouse was intimidating, all marble and echo and serious faces. Catherine sat on one side with her lawyers, looking confident and dignified. Grace sat with David and his lawyer, feeling small in her best dress, which suddenly seemed shabby next to Catherine's designer suit. The boys were there too, though they'd be interviewed separately. They looked scared, holding hands in the hallway, not understanding why Grandma was trying to take them away. Catherine's lawyer went first, painting a picture of instability. He talked about Grace's lack of credentials, her financial struggles, her history with child services. He made it sound like David had made impulsive decisions based on grief rather than good judgment. Mr. Hartwell hired a housekeeper to care for his children, the lawyer said. A woman with no background checks, no formal training, no references. And then, in what can only be described as a grief-induced decision, made her a legal guardian within weeks. This is not stability. This is chaos. Then came the character witnesses Catherine had brought. A child psychologist who'd never met the boys but testified about the importance of qualified caregivers. A principal from another elite school who spoke about proper educational environments. Grace felt herself shrinking with each word. Maybe they were right. Maybe she really was just fooling herself. Then it was there. David's lawyer called the boys' therapist first. Dr. Chen had been seeing Ethan and Eli since the hospital incident. In my professional opinion, Dr. Chen testified, these children have made more progress in the past few months than in the 2 years since their mother's death. Their anxiety has decreased. Their behavioral issues have improved dramatically, and when I ask them who makes them feel safe, they both say the same name, Grace. But surely, Catherine's lawyer interjected, any competent caregiver could have achieved similar results. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. 23 tried before her. None succeeded. There's something specific about Grace's approach, her consistency, her genuine care, that reached these boys when nothing else could. As a therapist, I can recognize healing when I see it, and this family is healing. Next came Mrs. Patterson, the twins' teacher. I've taught at Oakmont Academy for 15 years, she said. I've seen every kind of family situation you can imagine. And I'm telling you, those boys are thriving. Their grades have improved. They participate in class. They've made friends. 6 months ago, they were the most troubled children in the school. Now they're just regular happy kids. But the guardian in question lacks formal education, Catherine's lawyer started. She lacks a piece of paper, Mrs. Patterson interrupted firmly. She doesn't lack wisdom, or kindness, or dedication. I've watched her with those boys. She's exactly what they need. Finally, David took the stand. He spoke about his spiral after Elizabeth's death, about failing his sons, about the moment Grace walked into their lives and everything changed. My mother thinks I made this decision impulsively, David said, looking directly at Catherine. But it's the most carefully considered decision I've made in years. Grace isn't perfect. She doesn't have fancy credentials, but she showed up every day. She stayed when things were hard. She loved my sons when they were at their worst. That's not impulsive. That's exactly who I want helping me raise my children. The judge listened to everything, her face unreadable. Then she asked to speak with the boys privately. The wait was agony. 30 minutes felt like hours. Grace's hands were so sweaty she had to keep wiping them on her dress. Finally, the judge returned with Ethan and Eli. The boys went straight to Grace, one on each side of her. The judge sat down and looked at everyone in the courtroom. I've heard testimony about credentials and stability in proper environments, she said. And I've also just spent 30 minutes with two 7-year-old boys who are remarkably well-adjusted, considering what they've been through. They spoke about their daily routines, their feelings, their family, and they were very clear about who makes them feel safe and loved. She looked at Catherine. Mrs. Hartwell, I understand your concerns, I do. But the evidence shows that these children are thriving. Their therapist confirms it, their teacher confirms it, and most importantly, the children themselves confirm it. Catherine's face went pale. The petition for grandparents' rights is denied. The guardianship arrangement will stand as filed. The judge looked at Grace. Ms. Williams, you may not have traditional credentials, but you have something more important. You have these children's hearts. Don't take that responsibility lightly. I won't, Your Honor, I promise. Outside the courthouse, Catherine stood by her car, looking older than she had that morning. David approached her, the boys holding back with Grace. Mom, you can still be part of their lives, but you have to accept Grace. She's family now. Catherine looked at her grandsons, then at Grace. Something in her face softened, just a little. I was trying to protect them, I know. But they don't need protection from Grace, they need her. It took time, but slowly Catherine came around. She started joining them for Sunday dinners, stiff at first, then gradually warming. She even apologized to Grace one evening, though it clearly cost her pride to do it. I was wrong about you, Catherine said quietly. Not about everything, but about what matters most. 6 Neto.